Bill Carroll, Zenny62 Media, and once again, working through my watch list of players. I'm going to start with a player that was local, for me at least, Amir Abdullah, not that Amir Abdullah, Amir, Amir Abdullah, who went to Whitney Young High School, of course, just west of the Loop here in beautiful Chicago. Had a terrific high school career, makes his way to Nebraska Kearney, and after a couple of years there, decides to transfer to Illinois State, back closer to home, and has had a couple of great seasons as a Redbird. I'll start with last year. Was a second team FCS All American for Real Steel, who was a hard grader. Third team for FCS Football Central, and also for Associated Press, as well as the Stats FCS All American team. Was ninth in the voting for the Buck Buchanan Award, which goes to the FCS National Defensive Player of the Year. Had a fantastic season. Uh, First of all, was productive in every single way that a defensive player could be. He had 9.5 sacks in 11 games. And he's a true linebacker. I want to make this clear. He's not a guy who's just sort of a stand-up defensive end who occasionally drops into coverage. This guy's a true, full-fledged linebacker. Does all the linebacker things you expect linebackers to do, but also managed to be tremendous. Was averaging 0.86 sacks per game, which is 6th in the FCS. Also had 1.3 tackles for loss per game, which just as being in the top 25 in the country, playing in 11 games. Once again, as a true linebacker. Additionally, was 4th on the team in total tackles, 64, 34 of them solo. Had 2 forced fumbles, has a pass breakup, and had 1 interception on the year. If you watch the Youngstown State game, and that's a good football team, he had 11 tackles in that game. He had 3 games with multiple sacks, including a 2.5 sack, 3.5 tackle for loss game against Eastern Illinois. Of course, a big rivalry here in the state of Illinois between the guys in Charleston and down there, Illinois State. Was the newcomer of the week after having 9 tackles, a sack, and another tackle for loss, as well as an interception against the Racers of Murray State, which I seem to get a little bit bigger. I mean, my comparison for him, and I'm making clear, I'm not saying he's Derek Brooks. I'm not, because that would be crazy talk. But I see some Derek Brooks, John Mobley, Cato June-esque things when I watch him. And yeah, I probably should have started with those guys and not said Derek Brooks. But like Brooks, he can do everything despite being undersized. He's probably 216 pounds, 6'2.5" ish, right? I do not care. Because he's strong at the point of attack, he can run, can diagnose plays, doesn't really have a weakness, quite frankly, as a player, in my opinion. So, only thing I'd like to see him really work on is be even more disruptive in the passing game. Get your hands on even more footballs. To me, that's about it. Like, that's a short list of things to quibble with, but to me, that's the list, is that you'd like to see him maybe have a bigger effect on that. But once again, did have a couple of passes defensed, a couple forced fumbles, along with all the other rather gaudy, 9.5 sacks and everything else. But this is a true linebacker. Like I sometimes feel like I have to say, I don't say that enough, simply because when people see his numbers, they almost look like one of those guys who's listed at linebacker, was really just a defensive end who just stands up. No, he's a linebacker. Terrific player. Once again, can do a little bit of everything. Now, I also want to make sure that I hit on another player that, while maybe not as complete, because there's few players I think that are as complete at their position as is Mr. Abdullah, I do want to mention Carter Bell from South Dakota. Now, Carter Bell is another person where maybe the biggest knock is size. Listed at 5'11", I'll be shocked if he's not 5'10 and 3/8, probably 5'10 and a quarter, maybe. I'm fine with that. But he's legitimately about 191 pounds. I jokingly at one point had put down in my notes, white Percy Harvin. That I was kidding when I said that. He's not quite that explosive an athlete, but a better athlete, I think maybe some people might realize. Came originally as an all-purpose running back and got moved to wide receiver. Last year, 52 catches on 908 yards, 5 touchdowns, and the 8th most in the history of that team. Had a big game against number 2 North Dakota State. 5 catches for 124 yards, a touchdown, 50 and 52 yards. Also in that game, they 24-19 win. And then 2 days later, 5 catches, 131 yards in a 34-31 battle against number 23 Youngstown State. So he shows up big against big opponents. Things to tell you about him. He probably is a slot receiver at the next level. When you see a white guy that size, you sort of automatically think slot receiver. But I hope whoever gets him at the next level isn't afraid to let him play outside some. He's proven over and over that he can. And once again, not to compare him to Steve Smith Jr. because he's not quite that explosive, not quite that powerful. But Steve Smith Jr. another guy that people look at and thought he immediately slot, and then they saw him actually play. It's like, oh wait, he can line up wherever he wants to. So, despite the serious season he had, once again, everybody has things they can work on. Now, as a kick returner, he did absolutely nothing last year. He did a little bit something the year before that, a little bit before that. For his NFL prospects, he needs to probably be a little more involved in that. He still was involved in the punt return game, not a lot, but had 7 punt returns for 60 yards. That's an 8.6 average. His long was a 14-yarder. I would like to see him. I understand they're protecting him, but I'd love to see him get even more involved in that game. And then last but not least, yeah, some little, shovels, little reverses, little, maybe let him throw a ball. He seems like just a player who's really good at making plays, big plays at big times. I would just try to be even more creative with getting the ball to him. Use him even more as a true 3-phase, 3-stage, 3-level wide receiver. Let him get the ball all over the place in all situations. I would line him up, heck, at tight end occasionally, in the slot, line him up in the backfield every once in a while, let him run an arrow route out of the backfield, dare some linebacker to try to stay with him. I would just not force the ball exactly, but I would definitely be creative in my use of Mr. Carter Bell. A really good football player, and once again, he'll have to originally, when he first got in the NFL, to show he can be a real contributor on special teams. May not get drafted. Once again, physical testing will be everything for a guy like him. If he runs in the low to mid 4.5s, probably is a priority undrafted free agent. If he runs slower than that, probably still an undrafted free agent, but doesn't get as much signing bonus. And then if he, runs in the mid to upper 4.6s, he's the guy that maybe gets a tryout. If he runs in the 4.4s, if he runs in the low 4.4s, chance to be drafted in the 3rd. I think Amir Abdullah is a guy. I have a 5th, 6th round grade on him now, and I wouldn't be surprised if he ends up going somewhere there. He is a player that I will maybe bothering Jim Nagy about for the Senior Bowl. But once again, Bill Carroll, Sydney 16 Media. I will have 2 more players for you in 2 Shakes of a Lamb's Tail, which, if you're not from the South, translates to soon. See you then.